Okay, let's just jump right into this. I'm absolutely pumped to guide you through this explainer today because we are taking a really deep dive into a chilling, true-life campfire tale. It's one of those stories that completely blurs the line between urban legend and horrifying reality. We're traveling to the vibrant, sunny state of Goa, India, but we're leaving the beaches and the sunshine far, far behind to examine the really dark lore of the infamous Mello house.
So ask yourself honestly for a second. Would you visit Goa's most haunted house alone at midnight just for a dare? I mean, it's pretty easy to sit there right now and say absolutely not, but 3 years ago, a 19-year-old kid named Samarth was sitting around a crackling beach bonfire with his friends, just swapping ghost stories in the pitch black of the night. And, getting totally caught up in the thrill of the moment, his friends threw down this exact challenge.
Section 1. A dangerous midnight dare. Okay, let's dive into this, because this is where a fun vacation takes a very dark turn.
The challenge was, well, it was beautifully simple, but absolutely terrifying. Enter the dreaded Mello house completely alone, walk into the dark, and just take a photo to prove he was actually inside. Now, being 19 and full of that classic teenage bravado, Samarth literally laughed off the danger. He was actually excited about it. He hopped right onto his scooter and sped off into the night, completely unaware that he was riding straight toward what a lot of locals literally describe as a death trap.
Section 2. The Mello house legend. To really grasp what Samarth was walking into, we need to lower the lights and go back a bit. Decades ago, the Mello house wasn't the ruin it is today. It was a normal home to two brothers. But over the years, this incredibly deep, toxic hatred grew between them. The arguments just kept escalating out of control until, one night, it reached a terrifying climax. One brother was brutally stabbed to death by the other. In a panicked, desperate cover-up, the surviving brother actually buried the bloody corpse under a massive tree right in the backyard. Not long after that, the surviving brother died too, and according to the lore, that is exactly when the haunting began, totally fueled by a restless, vengeful spirit.
Which brings us to this incredibly chilling quote from local legend. Their fight never ended, and their souls are still trapped there. The locals firmly believe the house is basically a paranormal prison for these angry spirits, doomed to repeat their murderous final night on a continuous loop. So yeah, those are the stakes as Samarth pulls up to the property.
Section 3. Entering the darkness. Now, what's really interesting here is how we can track the physical environment actually shifting as our skeptical 19-year-old gets closer. It's not just a spooky old building. The atmosphere itself kind of turns against him. As he's riding his scooter, that warm Goa air suddenly plummets into a freezing cold wind. Then the normal nighttime sounds of the jungle, they just stop. Complete suffocating silence. Finally, this overwhelming, creeping feeling of restlessness and deep anxiety washes over him. His whole sense of safety is just being completely stripped away before he even parks the bike.
And then he sees it. The exterior of the Mello house is intensely menacing. It's this old, ruined Portuguese structure where time just feels like it's completely stopped. But the wildest detail is this massive tree leaning ominously over the house. The trunk was covered in these deep, jagged scratch marks, almost like someone or something had violently clawed at it with bare nails. And its huge roots were physically breaking through the ancient stone walls. It literally looked like the tree had swallowed the lives of anyone who dared get close.
Let's see how this builds, because the moment he steps past the gate and crosses that threshold, his body physically reacts. He feels this immense, crushing weight just drop onto his chest. He's suddenly struggling to even pull in a breath of air. And then bam, he's hit with it. This overwhelmingly foul, unmistakable stench of rotting meat. It was like a dead animal was decaying right inside the walls. He forces himself down the dark hallway, and his flashlight reveals something incredibly unsettling. The peeling walls were covered in these hand-drawn, distorted cartoon faces. But their features were all warped, and instead of eyes, they just had empty black spots. Wherever Samarth moved his light, it felt like these hollow, black eyes were staring directly back at him, tracking his every single move. Just entirely creepy.
Section 4. Face to face with death.
Okay, so the crucial point is here. Samarth has made it inside, and he raises his phone. His expectation? Take a quick, blurry selfie, win the dare, and head back to the bonfire a total hero. But the reality? As his camera screen lights up his face, he clearly sees two tall, mysterious shadows standing directly behind him in the frame. Panicking, he whips around to face them, but the long, dark corridor is completely empty.
Before he can even process that empty hallway, the dead silence of the house just shatters. A loud, guttural growling erupts from the darkness, followed immediately by horrific, violent shouting. And then, a blood-curdling, painful scream. It was the distinct sound of two full-grown men viciously fighting, practically right next to him in the pitch black. Terrified out of his mind, Samarth rightly decides the dare is over. He goes to use his phone's flashlight to sprint for the exit, but his fully charged phone instantly dies, screen totally black. He turns to run toward that massive tree at the exit, but to his absolute horror, his feet won't move. They are inexplicably glued to the ground, like invisible hands have grabbed his ankles from beneath the soil. He slowly forces himself to look down at his trapped feet. And right in front of him, the earth has opened up into a massive grave pit. Lying inside the dirt is a half-buried, decaying corpse. But here is the heart-stopping twist, guys. As Samarth stares at the rotting flesh, he realizes the corpse is wearing his own face. It was him, dead and decaying right there in the dirt.
And this brilliantly illustrates the true nightmare, because hearing the growling again, he looks up, and the two brothers finally appear. Their bodies are rotting, covered in deep, bleeding stab wounds and smashed skulls. And most terrifyingly, their necks are violently snapped 180 degrees backward. Their heads are completely reversed, just glaring at Samarth with furious, blood-red eyes.
Paralyzed by fear, Samarth can only watch as the brothers slowly advance toward him. At the exact same time, the corpse in the dirt, the one with his face, reaches up and violently grabs him, yanking him down into the soil. Samarth is screaming. He's fighting with every single ounce of strength he has, thrashing against the dirt, but the grip is just too strong. His breath gives out, and total, suffocating darkness swallows him whole.
Section 5. The terrifying aftermath.
Let's just take a breath for a second and ground this back in stark reality. Because at exactly 5:30 a.m., the sun was just starting to rise, cutting through the night. This is the exact time Samarth's panicked friends, who had been frantically searching for him for hours, finally arrived at the Mello house. They found him lying completely unconscious in the dirt outside the house, totally covered in mud, but incredibly, still breathing. When they finally dragged him away and he woke up, shivering and completely traumatized, we see this really stark contrast. For Samarth, his reality was a near-death paranormal encounter. He had literally fought his way out of a grave. But his friends? They totally dismissed the entire horrific ordeal. They told him it was just a hallucination brought on by panic, the dark, and an overactive imagination.
But Samarth knows what he saw. Actually, as his friends were helping him away from the property, he turned back to look at the cursed house one last time. And there, standing perfectly still in the dusty window frame, were the two rotting brothers staring directly at him. That haunting final image absolutely broke Samarth. He packed his bags and fled Goa that very same day, forever scarred by the trauma of what he went through.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Is Goa's Mello house truly a supernatural prison for two murderous brothers, or was this whole ordeal just the intense, fear-induced imagination of a terrified teenager alone in the dark? What do you think? And more importantly, do you have any chilling local legends like this in your own town? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and keep questioning the shadows.